if you level up high enough, the glass eye turns into a Pepe the Frog.
Oh no! Horrible. We should not be making fun of him. So people have already been canceled for this before.
Yeah. What are we gonna do?
You mean Dan's eye? I mean, my take on Dan's eye is that like, I understand, and I'm a little weirded out sometimes when you make fun of him for missing an eye, because in a sense that it's sort of like, okay, do you really want to like have open season on people with disabilities? But at the same time, like, he's the one who chooses to look like Punished Snake. So the eye patch thing, I do think is ridiculous. I mean, like, and if I get canceled for that, so be it. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, everything else he does makes him a villain. So yeah, not really a big deal.
Yeah,
I mean, Dan Crenshaw even says that he, specifically chose to wear the eye patch.
Yeah, because the glass eye would be too distracting, apparently. Yeah.
Well, he couldn't fit the Conoco logo on the glass eye, but he can fit the logo on the eye patch, so...
Contrary to popular belief, Ben Garrison is really bad at drawing eyes, and Dan was like, dude, I'll make it easy for you, okay? Just make me look jacked in every cartoon.
God,
it really is weird, because it's clearly something that, like, bothers him in terms of his own public image as he tries to groom his public persona. And so he's doubled down with doing the eye patch, and the photos of him without the eye patch make you realize that he gets that much more charisma, and you're like, oh wow, this guy has a story. Because without that eye patch, he just looks like another dopey white guy senator or representative in Congress. And
well, like, he wasn't lucky enough, like Tammy Duckworth, to like lose a couple of legs so he could like wheelchair around and be like, oh, like Lieutenant Dan, wheelchairing around with long hair and a bandana. Like, so he has to do something to like just be like, oh, by the way, I was wounded in service too. By the way, like I'm a veteran. Like, that's his way. Like, he can't get away with wearing one of those stupid, I served in Afghanistan hats, and he knows everybody would make fun of him if he was wearing a trident constantly. So, like, the only thing that he can do to let people know, like, yeah, I served, is to wear a goofy ass eye patch.
That being said, though, I looked up Dan Crenshaw without eye patch, and there's a photo on the fuck them, but the Daily Caller, of him wearing an eye patch that appears, from what wearing a glass eye that appears to be a Navy SEAL trident set in blue in his eye.
Jesus.
He's got one too, because he met the what's his name, the guy who plays Captain America, and he had a Captain America shield eye, glass eye that he was just like, and then Captain America's like, well, I mean, these are the real heroes of
these
America.
are the real heroes here. I mean, Captain America stands for anything. It's shooting Afghan kids in the face while they're sleeping.
Yeah, the war crimes Captain America did were not real.
Psychic Dolphin Garage.
Welcome to another episode from the Psychic Dolphin Garage. It is once again me and Kelton here today. And we have some very special guests that we are excited to have on our show. It's the guys from What a Hell of a Way to Die. It is Nate and Francis. How's it going, fellas?
It's great. Over here in the United Kingdom, wishing I could have as patriotic a representative as Dan Crenshaw. But I don't. Instead, I just, there are a few attempts to be as like extremely valor protecting veteran in this country, but nothing is insane. Certainly no one is going to walk around with a Captain America fake eye. So in a way, it makes me proud to be an American.
I'm sorry, Nate, don't you currently have a prime minister that like did some sort of Tinkerbell thing covered in Union Jacks at one point in time?
He got stuck on a zip line. Yes, he got stuck. He was doing a zip line waving the Union Jack to promote Brexit, and it was something with when he was London mayor. And yes, he's such a heavy dude that he wound up getting stuck on the zip line, and they had to like bring up people on a crane to get him down.
I could just imagine like having to do a cherry picker, and one guy is just there like so he has to push him and then move the cherry picker down another 10 feet.
So if you ever wondered why Boris Johnson, despite his aristocratic breeding, is such a weird-looking guy, apparently he, much like Tom Cotton, eats birthday cake for breakfast, and also he drinks a liter of Diet Coke every day. So in a way, like the Trump comparisons aren't that far off because he eats like shit and he's really lazy.
God, like I'm 36. I'm scared of looking like that. Like every day of my life, I wake up and I'm just
he's like 52 and has maybe 5, maybe 6 kids. No one really knows. I'm dead serious. He doesn't know how many kids he has, or at least it's not been publicly acknowledged how many kids he has. Like the man he's a piece of shit, but also like in a way you have to kind of admire just how much of a fuck up he is, and just he can just walk into the room like, oh well, I should be in the ruling class, and like they just deal it. They're like, cool, yeah.
I mean, that's what happens when you walk in and you have the best teeth in the room. They're like, okay.
That hits close to my heart because I actually had to have one of my front teeth removed living here, so I have a denture now. But I moved to Britain and then immediately my teeth started failing me, as if like it's like you know the score, bitch. You moved here, you have to deal with it.
He's gone native.
The stories, they were all true. Well, I sure am glad that you were taking well to living across the Atlantic.
Yeah, it's all good. I mean, so we continue to podcast, so that's the model. Yeah, that's the marvel of the modern era that we're able to do this and be on you guys' show to talk about the most, I would say the most hua of all representatives, but he wasn't in the army. He was a Navy SEAL, so I guess the most murder body.
Hoo-yah?
I don't know.
Hoo-yah? Isn't that what it is?
Until 2017, the most of the Navy SEALs.
Yeah. So, Francis, I didn't let you introduce yourself. So, of course, Francis is the resident Missourian on our show, who's also a troop.
Yeah, I am the Midwesterner. I'm the enlisted man on this, while Nate is the officer. If you don't know what that means, actually, like Nate and I are both like if you took both of us and threw us back into war, like we'd probably be on a first name basis anyway. I'm kind of like that with all of my captains. Like I respect them just enough to where like they don't get me in trouble, but also I don't have to do anything. And that's
not to spend any time not talking about Dan Crenshaw on this episode, but what is your podcast? Tell us a little bit about your podcast, a little bit of how it started and what you guys.
Yes, we're going to pretend that y'all aren't a giant podcast and we are, so small and reveling in this opportunity to get y'all on. So for the 3 listeners of ours who are unaware, please help them out.
Well, once upon a time, there was a leftist podcast that turned out to make a whole lot of money on the internet by having takes online. And I thought, I have takes online and nobody's giving me any money. Thus, a podcast was born.
Brilliant.
I mean, I said, so what do I have to offer here? And it's like, well, I'm a leftist and I'm in the military. I guess that can be my brand is, the socialist military anti-war guy. Mm-hmm. And I was doing it for a while with a guy named Adrian. And then Nate came on with us. It was kind of a back and forth there at the beginning where like Adrian and I were planning it and then we stopped and then we started to do it and then we got Nate on. And then Adrian left the podcast to go do other things, and so it's just been me and Nate once a week, just dropping some information and doing podcasts on whatever is happening in the news and talking about it from a not just a leftist perspective, but also kind of a perspective of like let me explain to you as a military person to a civilian why this is important or what's going on here. Or something like because some people like recently I saw ICE has been saying that they were transporting migrants that they caught to a forward operating base, and it's like Jesus fucking Christ, now we have to explain why this is basically them being their own bullshit military because a forward operating base is not a thing that you have in America because we're not a war zone. However, ICE, they're a bunch of shitheads, so of course they're going to do something like that. So we like to kind of help people bridge that civilian military divide without being insanely racist online like most veterans. So anyway, yeah, that's the podcast. We just do military stuff and we have fun with our bonus episodes. I recently recorded an episode with Nate's wife about the movie Coming to America, and then later that day I interviewed a former Navy pilot the UFOs that what's his name from Blink 182
Yes.
released video of. He did, yeah. He it wasn't him that took that video in particular, but it was his squadron, and he's also like, yeah, we all saw that stuff out there, and so that's what we like to do with our bonus episodes is just kind of hodgepodge it and have fun with those. So yeah, that's our podcast.
Very cool.
Yeah, it really is just very sad to me that in 2019 we have basically confirmed UFOs and the possibility of aliens, and no one cares anymore. It just like when I was in elementary school, this was something I would fantasize about, and to now be an adult and just go like, oh, okay, well, I mean, that's like page 6 level news.
There's so many other things we got to worry about. Like until the aliens come here and like start like fucking with my stuff, I don't care. Like honestly, be like, oh, look, there's a UFO out there. Oh, we've got video. Look, we can see these streaks of light. Like, oh, what are they doing? Are they fucking off? Then I don't care. Like, if
we also
here's the thing,
with
they can come
Trump stuff too. It's like if UFOs being real, it's like the 5th most scandalous and insane thing that's happened today. It's just like nonstop. It's like Trump wins the Russiagate investigation, and he's like, I'm gonna do this on hard mode now. Like I'm gonna go for round 2, see if they can catch me. I'm addicted to the chase. Like, so there's so much dumb shit happening, and you ask yourself, you're just like, well, I guess there's also aliens. Like, cool, all right, well, game on.
Yeah, Trump is going to go to Hawaii and use the SETI the SETI dishes to ask the aliens to investigate Hunter Biden. And still, it's not impeachable because you know what? Just because they're part of another galactic civilization doesn't mean that that's that he's being influenced or anything. So we can't impeach him for that.
The founding fathers were very clear that they would allow extraterrestrial life to wage influence on our modern day election process. But
not come into America until they cross the border legally.
Got some good news and bad news about these aliens. They got a solution for climate change, but the downside is they're all eco-fascists. So how do we want to handle this?
Fuck. Well, I guess they're Republicans.
Their solution for climate change is to kill 20% of the world. And to be fair, we're kind of on that path anyway. So we just told them we're good.
Turns out they got rid of the top 20% though. So it was wildly out of left field.
And that's why Trump is still president. Hey-o!
Shit. Well, out of all of the bullshit that's happening around us, the center of one of the vortexes, I think, is our boy Dan. Today, I think we're gonna. The way I've prepared this is we're kind of talking about him as compared to Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the left's not cover girl, but their media darling, and Dan's continual fight to become the right's media darling and be that veteran cool guy that's like doesn't want big government but also doesn't want you to have socialism.
Dan Crenshaw being the head of this is very interesting to me because for a long time Duncan Hunter was trying to. He was trying like hell, and unfortunately Duncan Hunter did just a massive amount of crimes. But I respected Duncan Hunter more because his crimes were just like so outrageous, and he just completely didn't give a fuck. Like, for those of you not aware of Duncan Hunter, he's a representative from California, and he was like, for 10 years straight, he and his wife were overdrafting their account like 3 times a week, and just pilfering the money from their campaign finance, like literally for debt for years. Even they like campaign financiers like left. There's just like this is illegal. I cannot continue to be here, and they're just like, fine, fuck it, go. He bought like a plane ticket for one of his rabbits one time. Like, he's insane. Like, he's batshit insane. And I loved it. Like, Duncan Hunter, I loved him because he was so insane, and because everybody was just like, no, man, let's keep voting for him. His dad was a representative, and this is his son. So this is what we do now. This is what we want. We want the guy who buys plane seats with our funding for rabbits, and then throws his wife under the bus. So Dan Crenshaw, like James Crenshaw's just not as funny, I guess, is my problem. Duncan Hunter is like if Mr. Bean ran for office, just like a bumbling idiot who for some reason has power. And unfortunately, Dan Crenshaw is slightly more savvy, but he's just as dumb, but he manages to hide it more.
In terms of how smart Dan Crenshaw is, he's at least doing well, kind of migrating to the social media bubbles and getting his name not only out there, but also staying on top of the news cycles, keeping himself in the mainstream. Specifically this week, he blessed us with a tweet where he quote tweeted Senator Sanders and basically said that he is against people having access to specialized care if they were if they're veterans.
Yeah, Bernie Sanders, if you're unaware of some of his past, was like head of like the Senate Veterans Affairs Commission. Like so Bernie Sanders does not pander to veterans. He has given a fuck about veterans for quite a time. So yeah, he was Bernie Sanders is just like, hey, if we can't take care of our soldiers, we shouldn't be doing war anymore. Which like is one of those takes that like you have to be like an insane anime Stalinist or whatever, or a tanky to be just like, no, we should just throw them all into the gulag and grind them up for mulch or whatever. All the troops, fuck them. But Dan Crenshaw, man, he's just like got that. There's some knee jerk thing where somebody says something and he it's like, you're a leftist, I have to say the opposite. And so yeah, he has this like weird tweet where he's just like, I joined the army I joined the military when the country needed me, it was like to not get like free health care or something. Like, dude, you literally lost an eye. Like, don't you want people to get
and also
care of?
When you think about like the kind of injury that Dan had, I mean, there's plenty of people in America who've been injured in jobs, that involve heavy machinery or equipment, or just bad fucking luck where they've lost eyes, and like the kind of stuff he went through to get better would put somebody in debt for the rest of their lives, even if they had insurance. And the fact that Dan Crenshaw has zero debt. Now, okay, maybe he would have been fine because his dad worked in the fucking oil industry and he probably has money, but a regular person who wasn't rich who joined the military because of healthcare wouldn't have that debt. Now, don't take that as a statement saying you should join the military for healthcare, but more because Dan somehow has managed to find a way to like performatively become offended at the idea that Bernie Sanders cares about veterans and like whether or not veterans receive medical care. And so his whole point is like, well, I didn't join to be pandered to. I joined because my country needed me. It's like, well, bro, you're the same age as me. You joined the military in 2006. By that point, I can't really think you could look at it and be like, oh, my country really needs me right now. It's a lot different joining in 2006 than joining in 2001. And I'm saying that as somebody who joined in 2007. So I mean, like, fucking nail me to the cross. But the point being here that like he found a way to take a relatively benign thing and turn it into some kind of like right-wing culture war outrage point. And the weird thing is that most right-wing outrage surrounding veterans is that the healthcare isn't good enough and the benefits aren't good enough and that no one deserves anything in America except veterans. So it's weird to see how he's basically offended that Bernie Sanders is like, I support the VA.
Yeah, removing veterans' health care to own the libs is not the best strategy.
Yes, do
for
it.
him.
Yeah. So Sanders' tweet was, if you can't afford to take care of your veterans, then don't go to war. And Dan Crenshaw quote tweeted, watching Bernie pander to different groups to get their vote has always disgusted me, but now it's personal. I didn't go to war so you would take care of me, Bernie. I went because I wanted to serve and our country needed it. We didn't need it, first off. Absolutely nobody needed it, especially in 2006. Again, like this is the one thing that I get to be pure on is that like I joined before 9/11, goddammit. I didn't join just because it was so I didn't join because it was popular and cool. I joined because like
you joined the army back when nobody had heard of it.
But yeah, it is a wild, like, a while, and I'm you posted a Washington Examiner link, which is like a right wing kind of a right leaning thing.
Oh yeah,
and even they're just like even this article like doesn't feel like and that fucking Bernie. It's just like this is what he said and that's what he said and let's just move on, because it also talks about like a veteran who is just like, I'm gonna kill myself because I'm in such massive amounts of medical debt, and like you should take care of everybody. But like, if we're gonna play the troop game, you should take care of the fucking troops, man. And
Dan
like,
Crenshaw's like, no, that guy has
I don't
weak
understand.
genes. He should just fucking take a knee and drink water, and then he wouldn't have medical debt.
Yeah, Dan
Jesus,
Crenshaw, like on the operating table in fucking Germany, like fending doctors off with a broken K-bar bayonet, just like, don't you dare, don't you dare fix me. I'll gouge this thing out myself.
You better charge me for this. You better fucking make me pay for this, or otherwise it's socialism.
yeah. He fought them off for so long. That's why the eye wasn't salvageable.
I did this because I wanted it.
Jesus, it's good that people like Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez are pushing the right further right. Like, this is a case where it's not them like we're like, okay, we'll compromise, and then it's like, haha, you thought. It's like, all right, how fucking far are you gonna go to be against us? How many people are you willing to lose in order to take your like weird your weird stance against all these good things, objectively good things that we want, like Medicare for all, which, not to quote Ocasio-Cortez directly, but Medicare for all is single-payer healthcare, and that's it.
I don't know.
And pushing for something that's so great, like, oh, now you're against the good thing, like that's good. Dana's a dipshit.
Well, I mean, to be fair, though, maybe he was just listening to what Biden said when he said that our deductible would go up 4%. And he was like, well, we can't stand for that, right?
Flopping down Econ 101 in session, like, and it says right here that if there's more demand than there is supply, that the cost will go up. And that is my case, everyone. Thank you for coming today.
QED owned libs. I mean, the thing that gets me about it too is that if it wasn't this, it'd be something else, in the sense that he's managed to kind of take what I might describe as the sort of like forwarded email vibe. But he does have a certain degree of social media like acumen that a lot of I mean, like, okay, Mitch McConnell hires some fucking, Pepe teens, and they make him like some dumb thing, but wasn't it like somebody turned into a corn cob on his, like, on Mitch McConnell's Senate Majority Leader Twitter account. And
he also doubled down on Cocaine Mitch and got T-shirts and stuff.
Well, I mean, wow, he's gonna start peeling away people from the socialist left that way. The thing that gets me is that he does it, but it's weird because Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is good at it, and I also believe that she believes in the stuff that she's saying. I'm not going to say that Dan Crenshaw isn't good at sort of like how you manipulate the stuff and how you put things out and how you kind of frame things to get, viral content, but I really just can't believe in the slightest that he actually believes in this stuff. Like, I think he's just kind of a lame opportunist, but I mean, if you want to be a Navy SEAL congressman from Texas, this is what you do, and he's managed to do it well enough that, I mean, he didn't win by a huge margin. I think he won by like 20,000 votes in the general election in 2018, but he still won.
Yeah, it was only like a 7% margin of victory.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's just one of those things where I don't believe that that he really has any core principles, because I mean, he's a Republican who's, he's 35 years old. Like,
I mean, I don't believe any conservatives really have core beliefs, because it's all right wing. Being right wing is to be reactionary, and to be reactionary means to also just be reactionary in the things that when things happen around you, you're just going to react to those things in whatever way is going to be like negative, like we see here with this with this thing. And it's also like at one point in time, somebody, I think probably Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says something about gun control or getting rid of guns or something. And he did this like, hey, people out here in rural Texas, it's a little different than you New Yorkers. And I looked up like where, like the district he represents, it's twice the size it's twice the population of the city of fucking St. Louis where I live. Like where we've got fucking guns everywhere, and also we are shooting the shit out of each other constantly.
Yeah,
but
Crenshaw's,
he likes to. Yeah, he likes to play this just like us rural people. Let me pop on the cowboy hat that I bought down at the Stetson store for $240 and has never seen a drop of dust on it in any way, shape, or form. Like, it's
us Texans. Us Texans.
Yeah, and it's the same thing with George W. Bush used to do, where he's just like, well, let me get my spurs and my hat. It's like, you're from fucking Connecticut.
You went to Yale
for fucking Maine. But Dan Crenshaw too. He's like, if you're born and raised in the country, you know that gun's your best friend. It's like, Dan, you were born in Scotland. Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah. There's a way that we can really pitch Dan Crenshaw as being dangerous. I mean, like a foreign-born national raised in Latin America has now come in and seized the spot in our House of Representatives. Like,
I mean, this happens all the time. The Missouri governor, Eric Greitens, who was also a Navy SEAL and had a famous video of him, like he had this ridiculous campaign video where he just like machine guns a lake for 30 seconds while talking about how abortion is bad. And he won governor of Missouri because that's the hell world that I fucking live in over here in the Midwest. And he got ousted because he, fucking raped
He made a woman go into his basement and basically like made her take off her clothes, and he took a bunch of photos that he could like blackmail her with. It was insane, yeah.
Yeah, and he was always gross and creepy and everything, but he was also from California, and like that's one of those things where like it's like is Mitt Romney, who's never fucking lived in Utah, is a person represents Utah. It's like who are you people, and why does anybody like ever let somebody like if you come to me like you say I want to be the mayor of St. Louis, all right, first off, you better have lived here for at least a fucking decade. All right, number one. Number two, I better see a picture of you eating some gross-ass St. Louis pizza to fucking pander to me. Other than that...
No one should have to do that.
Even worse,
fuck.
That's the worse. There's a St. Louis, Francis can tell you about it, but the St. Louis hamburger that's instead of a bun, it's enormous ravioli. That's absolutely a thing.
Dude, we have toasted ravioli where you take a ravioli like normal and then you bread it and deep fry it because... fuck your arteries, basically. And it's delicious, and we love that shit.
Is that better or worse than the Cheez-Its Pizza Hut?
See, that's like cultural appropriation is what that is, first off. But also, I don't think it's funny because, Nate, your parents live in Indiana, and Hoosier is an insult here in Missouri. Hoosier means white trash.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily disagree with someone saying that's what it also means in Indiana, but such is life.
We are St. Louis is quite the little microcosm of weird shit. But like I just it's when somebody is not from an area, like I don't understand how that person's going to represent them. But like I said, it's not Dan Crenshaw doesn't have any real he's just a brand. He's an online brand at this point. And it's like I have to react. And I have to react to these things in a certain way. Whenever AOC says something, I'm sure like Bernie and AOC and probably Ilhan Omar, he has alerts set up so when those people tweet, he can immediately retweet them with some sort of like, oh, didn't you marry your brother? Ha 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 ha. Let me do a racism real quick.
Which is good branding because it worked. Because you did mention that he barely won. When he won the primary, he came out of the first round and he went he went to the second round, and in that second round he beat out Kathleen Wall by 155 votes. Kathleen Wall is the candidate who was backed by Ted Cruz and Greg Abbott, two very
prominent people in Texas, but even more so in that specific area. And so
here in Spring, Texas, where like this is heart of conservative wine moms going to church
Yeah,
together.
I remember being younger, and there was a news clip I saw of someone was like, the way we vote today in Harris County is how Texas votes. And the way Texas votes next year is going to be how the country votes. And people were like, yeah, woo, blah, 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 blah. And in my head, I'm just thinking, this is what a cult is like. This is exactly what you're trying to preach. This weird, suburban exceptionalism. And that's exactly what Crenshaw's market is. It's for...
Okay, first off, the entire state of Texas is a cult. Every Texan that I've ever met, I've assumed is in the cult of Texas, in which a giant Texas...
We're not allowed to talk about
a
that.
giant
Anyways,
Texas
moving
flag.
on.
Every platoon, every army platoon has a dude named Tex in it. Like, no matter what, there's always a dude named Tex, and he's always got like a fucking wheatgrass hanging out of his mouth constantly. Like, we're in Afghanistan. Where did you find that, dude? There's no wheat.
My mom
out here.
sends it to me in a
Packed
parcel
man.
from home.
Damn.
It's a wicker basket that got mailed to him.
Oh no. The picture of that dude that like brought dirt and grass from his home and is like watering it.
Oh no, there was
outside
an
his
even bigger,
barracks.
an even worse one. There was a guy who was in the military stationed in Italy, and he had someone ship him dirt from Texas so that when his wife gave birth, that his son's first steps on the ground could be Texas soil. I'm not kidding.
No.
I'm not kidding.
No.
It is real. That actually happened.
There is no way that child grows up and is not a complete psychopath.
No, right?
We are look, vote for me for president. We are balancing the national debt by selling Texas to literally anybody. Anybody can have it because it's got to be done. We'll give your star to Puerto Rico or DC or something, and we're just selling it off as a loss.
Yeah. We now call Texas
God, that's
New
horrible.
Croatia. Congratulations, everyone.
Well, did you guys see that? Like, Bang Brothers is trying to buy naming rights for a stadium.
Oh
somewhere,
yeah,
so
yeah.
we'll change the name of Texas to Bang Brothers, or Fake Taxi or whatever.
No.
This is
no,
GoDaddy.
listen, guys. We all know with Texas's reputation, the website that would get sponsorship of Texas would definitely be Sis Loves Me or some other random porn genre in that similar vein.
It's called Family Matters, and so that all of the like, you know, the boomers are like, oh yeah, family does matter. No, that's not where that website goes.
I think about it too. Yeah, but I mean, if you're in Texas, then that would be an interesting thing, because there's a part of me that imagines, and from when I look at somebody like Dan Crenshaw's background, that's not like salt of the earth, works in an oil field Texan. That's like his dad was an executive in an oil company. Like, he moved around the world. I'm assuming that area is like pretty wealthy suburban. And because I mean, the kind of guy who then goes to Tufts and then does Navy ROTC and then becomes a SEAL officer, like, that's not typically a dude who, grew up selling fucking catfish to make money. You know what I mean? Like, it's just not. I don't even know if they have catfish in Texas. I assume you do, but maybe you don't.
Galveston Bay has a strong, storied tradition of three-eyed catfish, sir, and we will not let you sell it.
Oh. Yeah, Tufts, by the way, is a private research university in Massachusetts. It's $31,000 a semester. So it's this is not like, Ocasio-Cortez going to
Boston University, I think.
Where was it? Boston University. Yeah, and he didn't like graduate like summa cum laude. He wasn't like giving the speech over his class, unlike Ocasio-Cortez. Like, he went to a rich boy university, and then he went to officer
I do
training.
wonder, since he went to Tufts and then she was at Boston University, how close their paths came to touching. Because then he also got his MFA from Harvard, and so, I mean, it's such a relatively tight-knit community, I know, in the college scene up there. But, I mean, just to think that there was probably a point in time where they were 15 miles away from each other and didn't realize that half a decade on, they would start screaming at each other online.
Yeah, I mean, it is weird. I think that it's strange to me how that never gets entered into the discussion. Because I mean, I absolutely think that when you deal with these people who are military veterans, the tendency, both in sort of like general media, politics, etc., but also certainly in like Republican messaging, is to paint these people as like authentic, real, true Americans. But I mean, as Francis and I will point out, there is a significant difference between somebody who's like, I served my country in the army and you should vote for me. I joined after Harvard and did was an army officer for 4 years like Tom Cotton and got out and then became went to Harvard Law School or whatever and then became a senator from Arkansas, versus a guy who joined at 17 or 18 and enlisted and then maybe got out of a couple of years and like went to school on the GI Bill, or maybe even didn't go to school. Like Lee Carter, the state assemblyman from Virginia, enlisted in the Marine Corps, and I don't believe he has a college degree. If he has one, he got it after the military. And he worked as like a cable repairman, and like an electrical line repairman too. That's very different than Tom Cotton or Dan Crenshaw or Pete Buttigieg.
If we want to.
So there's this inherent like class divide here, and I feel like that winds up getting like people want to put they'll paint Dan Crenshaw as like this steely-eyed killer, true American, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez as this spoiled rich kid because she went to college. But it's like Dan Crenshaw's far wealthier than she is, and he comes from way more money, from way more privilege. It's all over it, but like everything about him is apparently like Texas cowpoke who he's like, I just like you, I love hunting, except I hunt the most dangerous game kind of shit.
I mean, yeah, it's just like what's his nuts, Kid Rock, who loves to get up there and be just a good old boy, looking like a dirty rock star, and then you look it up and it's like, oh, you had like an in-ground pool because you lived on a ranch that was worth like $8 million. Like, that's where like all of this stuff is so inauthentic, and like I think it's really telling. Like the most disgusting part of it is just how telling it is from the American public, who just like fawn over this stuff. Like, and not even just on the right, but on the left too. Like I saw somebody with like a cutout of Kamala Harris that they walk around with at a Pete Buttigieg rally in Iowa, where everybody's like dressed up and doing flash mobs for Pete Buttigieg. It's like, these people are not like, these people aren't good. I don't know.
I gotta
and I mean,
I gotta jump in, Francis, and tell the story about Pete Buttigieg, because the thing that drives me crazy is, so there was a photo that Pete Buttigieg's fans and his campaign even were sharing. They'd made this meme about like how much of a badass he was, that like 0 divorces, 1 combat tour, 3 years at Harvard, whatever the fuck, all this stuff. And it was a photo of him in Afghanistan. It was your garden variety cool guy photo of him standing on like probably a hill on the forward operating base, but still within the confines of it, because he's not wearing any gear. He's wearing his regular uniform. He's not wearing a helmet. He's not even wearing a cover, like a hat, but he's holding an M4. But the M4 he's holding has basically nothing on it. If it had iron sights even, that might surprise me, because it looked like it was completely bare. And the way he was holding it was, if you could pantomime this, I'm going to talk you through it over this internet. He's got his right hand over the trigger well, so he's got his finger isn't on the trigger, but he's holding the pistol grip, and then he's got his left hand holding the what's it called, the Picatinny railing, like for the heat shields. But you got to realize
I'm looking at it now. It's
that
like draped across.
His hand is,
but gripping
his hand is overhand. He's got his whole hand over the front of it. Now, the reason why you would hold that rifle that way and have it underhand is so you can quickly swivel it up to your face so you can fire it. So if you just pantomime this with me, if you put your hand overhand on that and try to swivel that rifle up, you're throwing your own elbow into your eyes. There's no way to do it. So people, like the fanboys of Pete Buttigieg, look at that and they're like, oh, what a badass. What a cool fucking dude. And I look at that, I'm like, get that rifle away from that moron. Give it back to whoever owns it. Like, it's not his. That child unlocked the gun safe somehow.
Yeah, he is.
The child.
I'm looking at it too, and I'm just like, man, they even gave me a fucking close combat optics sight, and I'm public affairs. Like, they didn't expect that, but I actually went outside the wire too. I went and did cool guy shit. But I didn't I am surprised. I had to go look it up because I couldn't remember if there was actually a magazine in the well either. But he does at least have a mag in the well, so he can, in theory, shoot somebody with it.
I mean,
if as long as it's not.
I was going to say, when he invariably drops it on the dining facility floor and it fires off, he'll have scored himself a kill in combat. So I mean, like we bring that up just because like that's the sort of weird kind of fawning stuff that you'll see. And for us, it's so insane because, like, it's not even the pandering I get, but like the weird fixation on stuff that just is so transparently not normal and not correct. That's the thing that really weirds me out about it. And so, in that regard, like, whenever I hear about somebody like Dan Crenshaw, I mean, who goes into politics, I mean, he's 6 months older than I am. Like, imagine instead of doing this podcast bullshit, I was a congressman. Like, I can't imagine that somebody of that age, like, joins the military and then and has a random thought, you know, after separating from the military that like, oh, maybe I'll go into politics. Who knows? Maybe someday. It's like, clearly this dude's had a plan, and it worked for him.
Yeah, and somebody said, you know, you have to be absolutely insane to do what Buttigieg did, which was go to Harvard first and then join the military. It's like, there's no reason why you're doing that other than because you want to be, you know, you want to have some sort of military cred when you run. And of course, you know, military Twitter like fucking quickly runs to jerk themselves off because military Twitter loves Buttigieg because he's a veteran, but he's not an insane right-wing racist. And it's like, okay, sure, his racism is a lot quieter and a lot more insidious in some ways, but, you know, sure, he speaks the nice words and it makes you all feel better about it. But like everybody, you know, rushes, it's like, well, maybe he wanted to serve his country. Like, look, I don't know anybody who joins the military anymore to serve their country. You join because you want the benefits, you want the healthcare, you want the college, you want to get out of whatever podunk fucking town you're in. You want to run for you want to be a politician one day. Maybe you go and become an officer and go do all that. But like, I will trust somebody who says I've joined because I wanted to serve, and then they join up as a fucking E1 private bullshit, going through getting screamed at by some drill sergeants, getting treated like shit, and then coming up through the ranks. Like, that's like the military equivalent of telling people that, you know, you should, you know, everybody should work like 6 months to a year working at like as a waiter at a restaurant, or working in the service industry, so that you understand what it's like, so you treat people better. Like, congratulations, you were an intel officer. Who the fuck cares? Like, you're cool. You were a useless officer, just like many of the other ones that I've come across.
Like, have you dug up any intel that's going to win the war in Afghanistan yet, Pete? Right. I heard it's right around the corner. You just got to do that PowerPoint slide really well. Make sure those fonts all match, and we're going to fucking win this shit.
Yeah, congratulations. I'm sure you made the PowerPoint presentations that really made the Admiral say, yeah, that really kept the Admiral awake during the fucking battle update brief that he was dragged out of bed for every fucking day, so you could excitedly stand in front of him and get your fucking FaceTime.
I'm a real Ranger. Like, it's just, it drives me crazy, man. And like, I don't know. I mean, Democrats are weird in the way that they yes, Democrats are weird in the way that they fixate on this, like, because the spectrum of Democrat military jackoff stuff tends to be like either Jim Webb, like, I killed a man and it was fucking great, or it's like what's his name, Dick Blumenthal, basically lying about like being more in the shit in Vietnam than he was, or like the Pete Buttigieg thing. And it's strange to me how so much of it really seems like people kind of in a very uncomfortable way having to play this part of like, I don't know, this is going to sound, I don't want to sound like some right-wing asshole, but the sort of like the woke troop, like not in the sense of actually being like politically aware, like not being anti-imperialist, but like, you know, I believe in that gay people have the right to get married. I believe in blah, blah. I believe that it's great when banks have pride stickers.
Yeah.
And I back that up. Yeah, I backed that up by being in the army.
In 15 years, in 15 years, Pete Buttigieg wouldn't have to run as a Democrat because he's gay. He could run as a Republican because his values and ideals would be Republican.
And if the furthest left that we can expect the Democrats to be is just like Republicans with
I don't mean to gatekeep being
Republicans
queer,
with gay
sorry.
friends, then it fucking sucks.
Yeah, I think
the only thing that Dan Crenshaw has done that's like kind of like cool as he had to go through SEAL training? Like, yeah, that's, you know,
Yeah, it sucks.
hard.
I'm sure. Fucking. I mean, I didn't go through anything like that, but I went through some training in the Army that was not fun. And like, yeah, he probably got his ass kicked. It probably was miserable. Like he clearly got through something that's hard. But I mean, there's that. Wasn't Dan Bagingo or whatever, that guy that's always on Fox News yelling about guns? Wasn't he a Navy SEAL too?
Yeah, I think Oingo Boingo
Yes.
was a.
I can't remember how to say his actually named Bongino, I think. I know that because I added him with saying like Ding
Yeah.
Babongo so many times that he blocked me, and I can't actually remember his name anymore.
Yeah, he's one of the NRA spokesmen, along with Grant Stinchfield or Bitchfield or whatever.
Yeah, that guy.
And yet, who never joined,
And he was
like
a Secret Service
Yeah.
agent.
yeah, and yeah, whenever somebody tries, like, well, I was Special Forces, like, okay, man, like, yeah, I probably couldn't do it. I also don't want to fucking do it. Like, it doesn't, being able to do a shitload of push-ups doesn't suddenly mean you get licensed to be a racist asshole. Like, but for some reason, like, these Navy SEALs who, like, they want to come to you and they want to say, look at these great and wonderful things that I did. And like we've talked about it on our show, the Navy SEALs will fuck your day up. It'll fuck the day up for the people who they are, door kicking and dropping bombs on. But then they'll fuck your day up because they just came in and kicked a bunch of doors and dropped a bunch of bombs and then fucked off and said, well, now you have to deal with it. Like, the Navy SEALs have never been like any kind of like, positive gain. Even, when we talk about, if you want to bring up, killing bin Laden, we could have had him in 2001. Like, the Taliban said, we will give you bin Laden. You just have to recognize this as part of the Afghan government. And we said, no, we want total annihilation. We want our revenge. That's what we wanted. We wanted revenge. We wanted to kill brown people, and we wanted everybody to be okay with it because we thought we were going to finish it in a couple of days. We couldn't even do that with fucking Saddam. Like, how long did it take us to catch Saddam out of a fucking spider hole? So you've got, like, what the fuck has the Navy SEALs done that shouldn't have been done, 5 years beforehand by, like, a State Department person who, with a calm demeanor, who could have been like, yeah, we can make that deal. Like, but no, because we're America, we have to go out there with our dicks on hard and shoot everything and then plant an American flag on our dicks and say, look at that, we brought freedom to everybody. And it's like, it doesn't. Being a Navy SEAL no longer impresses me because I just think that you're an asshole. Like, every Navy SEAL out there, every one of them that's on Twitter, I've just been like, you're a huge
also, I would just
asshole,
jump in.
I don't want anything to do with
I
you.
would just jump in because something that I would say too that's maybe lost in context is that basically anybody, I was never in Iraq, but I was an infantry officer and I was in Afghanistan for a little over a year, and basically everybody that I know, and myself included, that ever dealt with the SEALs came away from the experience very frustrated because your day would be made worse because the SEALs would show up, they'd go hit a target, and then in getting their target, they would kill a bunch of civilians, and then you'd be left mopping up the scene. And basically, your soldiers would be at risk for getting hit with more IEDs and more small arms fire attacks because people hated you. Because why did Americans come and murder a bunch of civilians? And you couldn't be like, oh, those were different Americans. Those were Navy SEALs. They're really cool. Charlie Sheen did a movie about them. Like, nobody gives a fuck. You're still Americans. And as a result, they made our lives worse and they made our jobs harder. And like, I've come to the conclusion now where I'm just like, the war was fucked from the beginning. And like, I'm not saying like, oh, if only I could have been in charge, we would have won. But at the time, my goal was keep myself and my soldiers alive and stop people from doing wrong, illegal shit. And it was very hard to make my soldiers give a fuck about not doing wrong, illegal shit and being, giving people the benefit of the doubt when like the cool guys that they thought were like the ones you should look up to were basically just murdering people in their sleep, unarmed civilians, old men, young men, like sometimes in one case, a kid with cerebral palsy. Like it was fucking horrifying. And so a lot of like, the special operations worship freaks me out, but the SEAL worship particularly has really made me uncomfortable. And it's because of A, my experience there, and then B, like the just mass jack off that they've done since they killed bin Laden in 2011.
I don't understand why you weren't just walking around with boxes full of Lone Survivor, passing it out to,
Oh, you think that's fucking bad? Dude, when I was in Afghanistan, we'd get like the free book donations for soldiers, and somebody sent us, I'm not joking, like a full shipping container book. A full shipping container of Bill O'Reilly's book, A Bright, Fresh Piece of Humanity, or whatever the fuck it was. And I was like, nobody wants this. But there were literally, like, my battalion, which is only like 700 people, had like I'm not joking, like easily 2,000 copies of like some Z-grade Bill O'Reilly book that no one cared about.
You've now given me a dream. And
you want to know the best thing that I ever got in a care package? We got our small unit got 20 Josh Groban T-shirts that said "You raise me up," all size medium.
Hell yeah! Is there a screening process, by the way, for these care packages?
Oh, not really.
No, we get. Dude, we have.
Hold on.
In the shit that we get. Look, the shit that we get sometimes. Like when I was in Iraq, like my first deployment, Afghanistan 04, small PXs if you were lucky. So like everything that was sent to you was pretty much used. And you could always say like, hey, when they're saying like, oh, send the troops, soaps and socks and these little care things, little candy and stuff. Like, yeah, perfect. Send all that stuff to me because we don't have that here. I would love to, eat a Kit Kat bar or, drink a soda or something that we don't have here.
Yeah.
But like in 2009, when basically you have everything that you could ever want, that's when it kind of became insane. And like we had this gigantic library in our operations center that was full of romance novels, like
Perfect.
Just bodice rippers and like all the. It's like who sent these? Like who thought that a bunch of troops want to read? Like it's not even softcore porn; it's romance novels. So there's like a lot of turgid manliness inside of there. But there's no just like there's no like then I'm just face fucking her. There's none of that. It's not good shit. Like it's not the
now
shit
we know
that
your
that a
search
troop
history.
wants.
So
You may have to cut this for time, but throw this in. We got dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of letters from like elementary school kids and younger that were like from religious schools, and it was all just like things of like Jesus loves you and stuff. And in one case, there was this very 5 or 6 year old kid's drawing of Jesus, and the best way I could describe it was he looked like he had a very sly look on his face. And the text above it said, "Jesus is watching you." And then the speech bubble coming out of his mouth was, "I love you." And so, with this really creepy look on his face. So we, of course, taped it up inside the toilet. So when you sat down to take a shit, that's what you saw. Because it was just like, what the fuck what do we want? This, like, somebody that my grandma knows sent us like 100 pairs of like crocheted booties. I'm like, would you think we're going to wear these on missions? Like, instead of our boots, we're going to wear fucking booties? Like... We would get stuff like that.
It's all so well-meaning, but like the thing is that when you're deployed, you have a different mentality than you do when you're at home. Like because when you're deployed, you can die literally at any time. Like any point in time, a mortar can land on you, or an IED can go off, and you can just be dead. Like not even have a chance. Just you taking a shit, jerking off, whatever, and then bam, you're dead. So like there's a constant morbidity to everything. Just every day, just your everyday life. And then you get this stuff and like, look, I try now to appreciate like what people like, oh, it's very nice that somebody knitted a bunch of booties for everybody. However, I'm absolutely going to make fun of that. We love to get the letters from kids because we love to go through them and find the most fucked up ones. Plenty of them telling us not to get killed, which is always fun.
I love getting a letter from kids that just says, "Don't die."
Right, with a drawing of like a person in olive drab green dead, and then with like a drawing of somebody in a turban shooting you, and it's like, don't do this. I was like, I won't, Anthony, from 6th grade in fucking Connecticut. Jesus Christ, man.
So there was
fuck you think I'm
there was an
to do
email
out
that
here?
was getting shared that someone had scanned a photo, or they'd taken a photo and put it on the secure computer of a care package someone had received, and it might have been anywhere. It might have been being shared as like it was like a meme shared by email. Maybe it was during our deployment. I don't know, but it was this insane letter by this kid who was probably 11 or 12, and it was just like this rant about like, tell those fags in Afghanistan who you want a cock meat sandwich. Okay, here's extra mayo. Kill these fucking people. Win the war. And just like drawings of knives and guns. Someone had scanned this and then just written like, ultimately, what are we fighting for if not for a 12-year-old boy to write us letters expressing his weird murderous sex fantasies? It's
That
like
12-year-old boy became Lil Peep.
Yeah.
So, you know,
so like
all
that.
comes full circle.
That kind of shit is the norm. And so to me, bringing it back to what we were talking about previously, when you think about the Dan Crenshaw kind of like I'm a warrior and a gentleman, or like the Pete Buttigieg, like I'm a troop who believes in America. It doesn't jive with my experience at all.
I wouldn't want most of the people that I served with to ever be anywhere near public office. maybe like two of my majors who were really cool, but I was in public affairs, so I've met a lot of decent officers. But there's just a lot of people. It's like, man, I don't want you in charge of people, let alone fucking a chunk of this country ever. But yet, the military doesn't really look into backgrounds a whole lot or have that much of a screening process. As long as you can do enough push-ups, man, you get to be in the Army. So, fuck it.
Absolutely. God, listening to people talk about the intense psychological testing you go through to get into the military, and I'm like, have you read a book ever?
Like, I went through the
anything?
Special Forces course, and like when we were doing the psychological testing, basically all of it was like, unless it was on your criminal record, you could just lie. They had no way of knowing. Like, if you were dumb enough to admit stuff, then like, yeah, that you get screened out. But that's in Special Forces selection. Like, the regular Army doesn't ever do that shit. I mean, and even if it gave you the option to, your recruiter would like, dumbass, do not write anything besides no. Like, it's just.
My recruiter said no stands for numerous opportunities. And as long as everything that they say, everything that they tell you, it's like, have you ever, some people are like, well, you can tell them that you experimented and that's fine. I'm like, well, they can't prove anything. So why would I fucking tell them anything? And it's like, it's wild to be like from the get-go 17 years old and having your recruiter be like, okay, here's your relationship with the military to begin with. Fucking lie to them constantly and without mercy and just do it all the time. Do that for your entire career, really.
The questionnaire is like, have you ever killed small mammals? Do you have any psychosexual trauma? Do you love your parents?
Do you have any psychosexual trauma with small animals and your parents?
I mean, literally, I remember there was a kid in my squad in Special Forces selection who got screened out because they asked, have you ever had sex with a prostitute? And he was like, yes. And it was like, it was in Mexico. I'm like, dude, why did you say yes? Like, did you get arrested? He's like, oh no, I just thought you had to say. I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. And sure enough, they threw him out. Like, and he wasn't even a bad soldier, but it's just like, you're going to be a Green Beret. If you're dumb enough to do that, like to admit that, they don't want you in there where you're like, you might get hemmed up or like blackmailed for, going and getting sent to like a foreign country and then immediately going in and seeking out sex workers. But like, it's just,
they also don't want you to just like just be like, I mean, I thought I had to tell the guy everything. I mean, that's what interrogation is, right? He asks questions, I answer him, right? That's how it's supposed. No, that's not how it's supposed to work. Somebody should have told me that probably a little bit earlier in this whole situation.
Yeah. So I mean, but.
And aside from learning about the military culture as well, just reading the things that Dan himself says should be massive red flags about his how fit he is for office and whether or not we should vote for him. I have like a segment here taken out of an article that he wrote about how politics is all about inflaming the public, about how discourse is just about reactions at this point, and he's talking about he goes on about how Trump did these terrible things, all these people did terrible things, and then he's like, yeah, but we gotta just have better discourse that isn't inflammatory or retweeting people and saying things that are the exact opposite of what they're saying in order to stir up a bunch of other people responding to my tweets. He's really talking about how he's how his exact method that he used to literally get into office is kind of damaging to the American political system, and but he doesn't mention that he's also has all these positions that are damaging to the American political system. Some of them, anti-abortion. Some of them believing that we should have religion in our government. some of them, maybe being so pro-gun that you want to give your guns away. I don't know. I don't know how to take that tweet about him. Like, that was just such a bad, like, it was such a bad take. And I know you guys mentioned it already. It was such a bad take. It's just, I can't.
Look, I get. So here's the thing. I get what he's talking about. I get, like, hey, because hey, if I don't own a hunting rifle, so when and I have a buddy who's like, hey, we'll go hunting, I'll let you use one of my rifles. So sure,
okay.
I get that. I understand that because I don't want to go out and pay like $800-900 for my own rifle. If somebody's like, I've got a couple of them,
but in the same sentence,
but at the same
sentence is like, defend yourself.
Right. The whole argument there for that was just like, hey, you should probably have a license for a gun. And if you want to sell a gun, like if somebody wanted to sell a gun to me, there should be like a bill of sale. Like in Missouri, I can buy and sell guns out of my trunk and never tell anybody about it. Like there's no legal ramifications. It's perfectly legal for me. And I have sold and bought guns from people I know and to people I know. But I could go out to the street, and if somebody was just like, man, I really wish I had a pistol, I could go and just like, oh, hey, $400, I'll give you mine. And there's nothing wrong with that, nothing illegal with it. And like, if you think that that's like normal and okay, I think that you are pretty fucked up in the head. And not understanding like what kind of ramifications that means, because I don't think like anybody, like, look, we're a gun culture, and Nate and I have varying opinions on guns, but at the end of the day, we both firmly believe that there should be something that keeps guns out of the hands of people who would go and do horrible, terrible things. And we just don't have those. We don't have those protections. Like most recently, I just read an article about one of my St. Louis City police officers. His car was getting repoed, and so he pulled his gun on the repo man, and the guy ran off. That man will he's suspended. It's like he should be fired and never be allowed to carry or own a gun again, because he has just shown that he cannot keep control of his mental facilities, that he is hot-headed, and that his first thing is to pull a gun to in the event of something like this. And that's not going to happen.
To be fair, all cops should be stripped of their weapons and their rights to own
hard
weapons.
agree.
I mean, sure, especially since like, what is it, 40% of cops are like domestic abusers and everything.
Been reported to be.
Yeah. So
yep.
But it's what it comes down to is just like, look, if you've got a gun, you should have some sort of license, or something should say that, hey, you have the basic understanding, and you have to go through some steps to get this, to own this gun. You don't get to just like go out and buy a gun from a pawn shop, which is how we have it now. I remember when the Ferguson protests were happening, there was a story about some couple that went and bought a gun and was like waving it around at each other, just like, woo, yeah, we bought a gun now. Let's see those protesters come to us. And the woman shot her boyfriend while driving down the highway by accident. Like, this is literally what gun culture means. And that's the culture that we have in America. And to have this just like this ridiculous, like, I can't let a friend borrow a gun now. Like, that is it's a dishonest and disingenuous take on what people are wanting out of this, to just to really just continue to be a gun fucking conservative. Like, that's literally that's all they want to do, is just maintain we are pro gun and we love our guns and we fuck our guns and kiss them every night, and by God, if anybody tells us we can't kiss our guns, then they're a goddamn socialist. And then you can explain to them, like, socialists own a shitload of guns, and that's how we do revolutions, bitch.
Yeah, and also, that copy pasta that we read with Minion Death Cult about, no-knock raids being, actually existing already, and the police state already exists, and they already do that to citizens that are innocent, and they fucking murder them. It happened in Houston recently. They fucked up. They went to the wrong address. They didn't admit it. They shot each other. They shot like themselves, and then they shot the people that lived in the house, and they just fucking shot everything. And it's like, come on.
Could have possibly known
this isn't
a no-knock raid from plainclothes cops at nighttime would end badly for everyone involved.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
And what's even more baffling about Dan Crenshaw like having that is also after the El Paso shooting, he has said that he supports the TAPS Act. It's the Texas Threat Assessment Prevention and Safety Act of 2019. It was a bill from Brian Bavin, introduced in January, and it's about to develop a national strategy to prevent targeted violence through behavioral threat assessment and management and for other purposes. So he's like kind of in support of red flag laws, or at least this bill that is attempting to establish and create red flag laws, but also he thinks we need to have guns. So
well, red flag laws are a way to create a list of people. Like I'm not a fan of. See, here's my problem. Here's where my hypocrisy is. Where I think that like if you own a gun, that gun should be registered. But also like if you shouldn't be on a list that says you don't get to own a gun just because you had to spend some time in a psychiatric facility. But I don't know. Maybe you should. See, here's the thing. We need a Thanos finger snap to make all the guns disappear. And then just like everybody wakes up and nobody has guns. And then like whatever rioting happens is just like really stilted rioting where everybody's like, I'm so mad, but I just can't do anything about it. Ugh. And then we all just move on with our lives.
Because I was thinking about that. But yeah, like the red flag laws, absolutely. Like there's a case in which it seems like a school shooting might have been prevented by one. But then also in the wrong hands, you can totally see, and obviously I don't fucking trust cops in America or anywhere. In the wrong hands, those could be basically weaponized against people who otherwise might have a perfectly valid reason to have guns. But I'm also laughing because if Dan Crenshaw's neighbor in like suburban Dallas or wherever the fuck he lives, like someplace like wealthy and suburban, is like, hey Dan, can I borrow your gun? Like, what is he? Does he need it for hunting? He's like, oh Dan, can I borrow your rifle? I need to murder my wife and then myself. It's like. Yeah. A guy in the suburbs needing to borrow your gun for some reason is probably a red flag in and of itself, and yet somehow Dan saw fit to tweet about that as if it's like this is just how Texans get business done.
Yeah, maybe actually Dan's neighbor is about to commit a lot of praxis. He comes in, knocks on the door to Dan's house, asks Dan for a gun. He's like, "Yeah, just grab it for me." Dan hands it to the neighbor. The neighbor, walks away quickly. Dan then realizes that the neighbor was wearing gloves and trying to make sure that there wouldn't be any evidence on it whatsoever.
Hey man, do you have like a gun and just like a whole roll of like masking tape and and a cup of sugar? I don't want to seem too crazy here, but can you just? I'm trying to kill my wife and bake a cake at the same time, man. So if you could help a brother out here.
Busy Saturday,
The last dying note was like, see, it's not that hard to cook something that's not overcooked, Cheryl. Yeah.
Jesus Christ.
It's not that hard to not bake a cake. You fucking bitch. Interesting question. Kind of just, I want to keep following the gun control thing because I like y'all's takes on it.
You've got it in your sights.
In a better world where we don't have massive land pathways into the U.S. from the north and the south. Obviously, if we were a continent that's kind of surrounded by water, like say, I don't know, Australia, or alternatively, if we weren't so socially backwards, then gun control would be like a viable option, right? Because it's worked other places because they're isolated or because they were kind of a lot closer to gun control than we were specifically, or in Europe even, they implemented different laws that were gun control, but they didn't have anybody that was like, oh my god, they want to take away our guns. They were like, no, we just kind of need to regulate.
I think the problem is and I think it's one of those things that Republicans do kind of get right about how we have a culture of gun. We have a cult of gun where, and it definitely includes Hollywood too. I mean, come on, everybody talks about how cool John Wick is. Like, what does he do? He gets mad that somebody killed his dog and then murders like 1 million people with guns, doing cool gun stuff and doing gun guy stuff. And also, like, I mean, what are we taught about at the beginning of our country? We won it through independence because somebody said that, we're going to tax you, and we said no, and then we shot them all in the face until they went away. and doesn't, bring in any other, like, England was kind of busy with, the various other wars because they're England and they just love to fucking do some wars. But, it's just, that is our culture, is to be gun fuckers. And, I don't know exactly what we do here to break that. Like, and that's why I don't think we ever will. Like, America will always just be this culture of we can't get rid of our guns because our guns mean freedom. Even though, like, if the police or if the military wanted to come and take your guns, they're gonna, and you're not gonna win. And no matter what fantasies that you have about, fighting off the tyrannical government and saving yourself or stopping a shooter or something, more than likely owning a gun mostly means the only person you'll probably shoot is yourself. Like, honestly, especially with suicide rates going up and economic anxiety and all the other problems that we have, more than likely the only thing your gun is going to shoot is paper targets and yourself or your child if they manage to get a hold of it. And that's why, like, I've always been, I own guns, and I've, told my wife, I have like 3 people that have ever got the inkling of, like, maybe I don't like this life so much anymore. Those guns are immediately out my house. And that's what, and I've held guns for people before who have had problems like that, and unfortunately not everybody sees that. It's kind of it's the, I own a gun because that's what makes me powerful in this world. I own guns because I like the guns that I have and they're cheap, but they're also, like, behind 2 locks, a deadbolt and a combination lock, all broken down, taken apart. There's no, like, quickly go get the gun. It's like, cool, give me like 2 minutes. I got to put my shotgun together. So I feel like the biggest thing that we have to contend with in America is just that gun culture. Because, like I said, even leftists, man, even anti-gun leftists like to go watch, movies where, people get shot a lot, or they like to play video games where there's a lot of shooting. And I'm not trying to say that school shooters are caused by video games, but certainly a permissive culture of guns.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, just my succinct version, and I've talked about this a bunch on Hell of a Way to Die, is my parents live on a farm in southern Indiana, so, I mean, they need guns for a variety of reasons, but they don't. My parents and I have talked about this a bunch, and, like, if someone told them tomorrow, like, you can have guns, but you can't have semi-automatics, all you can have is like a revolver, or a bolt-action or lever-action rifle, or a pump-action shotgun, or you can't have, we change up the maximum amount of, like, magazine capacity on rifles, like on repeating rifles. They'd probably be fine with it. And I think that the people that are really into guns and really into, like, the really dangerous kinds want to obfuscate that, where, like, I think that if you had a gun, I was stationed in Alaska, and I had to drive through Canada to get back to the United States when I was leaving my duty station for good. And I mean, they're very thorough on, like, searching you, and when they know that you're on military orders, and like, they're very, very clear about, like, what you can and can't bring through Canada as far as guns go. And I feel like you could have a gun culture similar to Canada's, or you could have a gun culture even similar to the United Kingdom, where you have the ability to get guns if you want them, but it's just it's a national level. It's not state, individual states kind of thing. It's a national level thing. And I honestly think you could ban semi-automatic handguns and rifles, and people could still have the guns they need for what they need to use them for. And the argument that I've always made is, if you can't defend yourself or accomplish what you need to accomplish with a gun with a revolver or a lever action or bolt action rifle or a shotgun, you suck at shooting and you're a danger to everyone around you, because those are not hard guns to
what
shoot.
If 30 to 50 feral hogs attack my children? What do you want me to do?
You'll notice that I did not say that we should ban claymore mines. I actually think that every family deserves to have at least one claymore mine. And, I mean, maybe you need it to scare off fucking trick-or-treaters. Maybe you need it for those feral hogs. But in the grand scheme of things, flamethrowers are legal in every state in the country. I'm just saying. Yeah, so I mean, like, I always made the joke, because I lived in New York City for a long time, that, like, people ask me, like, don't you feel unsafe? Don't you feel like you need a gun? I'm like, no, not ever. But if I felt unsafe, honestly, I would keep a can of wasp spray at arm's reach in my bedroom, because if I was worried about getting broken into, like, or getting attacked, like, I'd spray somebody in the fucking eyes with wasp spray and get the hell out. Like, if I used a gun, for one, it would be very hard to get one legally, and for another, the walls in the place I lived, there was, like, the units have been subdivided, like they were really thin, and there's the penetration power on most guns, even 9mm pistols, is strong enough that like you could very easily shoot through walls and hurt people. And so it's just like,
hey, real gun guys, don't worry about collateral damage, okay?
yeah, exactly. And so I mean, I just look at it that I'm not. If I could snap my fingers and Thanos the fucking guns away, I would do it. I don't think people need them, but I recognize that like there's a compromise to be made with regard to like people who do need them, especially people who live in rural parts of the country, people who take care of livestock, people who live really far from, for example, like the nearest, any kind of emergency services. It makes sense. But there's a way in which, like in the same way, people are always like, "Oh, people died from cars. You're just gonna ban cars?" And it's like, no, but we're really restrictive on how.
Yes, we are gonna ban cars. Only public transportation.
I mean, that's fine with me too.
Fuck
yeah,
you.
Fucking hell yeah. But it's like, but the reason why people don't die at the same rates as they died in the 1950s is because of all these safety things that they've mandated and said these are required. And the idea that we couldn't do that with guns, it's just. Basically, the reason why people are fixated on guns is it's just racism. It's just they're convinced that like the dark other is going to come and accost them, and the only way to stop them is to be John Wick or to be fucking Neo from the Matrix or any other permutation of Keanu Reeves with a gun. Like it's just it blows my mind that people don't want to admit to themselves that like, I mean, one of my former soldiers shared a thing online because he's a fucking gun fucker, and his whole thing is. It says, why do you need an AR-15? And it's like a pie chart, and it's divided into thirds. And one third says, because I want to, one third says, because I can, and the other third says, because fuck you. And it's like, I can at least acknowledge that that's a truthful argument. That's why they want them. It's like, it's stupid, and there's no utility to it, but that's at least an honest argument. Everything else is just like, what, I would,
I mean, that's in like the realm of like, oh, I protest because I can and I want to, and you can't tell me not to protest. Like,
an AR,
like, there's like almost like we're exercising our rights. That's good. We're Americans. We live in a democracy. We want to make sure that we don't have our rights taken away from us. But like at some point, we got to admit that maybe that we shouldn't have the right to segregate people into separate areas of town.
Look,
or
the
AR-15,
the AR-15 and the .223 round is made specifically for killing human beings. Like specifically after they made all these different rounds. America was all about the big round. The 30-06, punch a hole through it, and they're like, hey, if we make this round this size and we shoot it at this speed, it can enter somebody's shoulder and shatter their clavicle, and then bounce down and break their pelvis. And then, come out of their butthole. So why don't we do that? And that we created a round specifically to do that. So the AR-15 and every one of its variants, the .223 round, is meant to kill people. And I don't give a fuck if you want to say, well, the AR-15 is not used by the... I don't give a fuck, dude. It's
the same goddamn gun. And that's one thing. If your listeners take any one thing away from us being on the show, when I was in the Special Forces course, we trained on modified AR-15s that had full auto. That was the only time I was in the military that I was ever told to use full auto. Similarly, most weapons nowadays, if you're not using modified ones, most people who carry M4s, M16s, etc. in the Army are using variants that only have a 3-round burst. I've only ever used 3-round burst in like a training situation where we were like, hey, hypothetically, here's a fire control measure. The platoon leader or the squad leader is going to initiate fire in an ambush with a 3-round burst because we don't have a claymore or something like that. We never use burst. Or basically almost never use burst. We only use single shot. And so the difference between an AR-15 and an M4 is so semantic. It's such a tiny difference. And functionally, the way that you employ it is the exact same. There is zero difference. So anyone who's like, oh, it's not the same rifle. No, that's just some gunfucker shit that like dudes with fedoras online came up with. It absolutely is the same gun.
There's not a fedora on your head, but there's one on your heart.
And there's one tattooed on my ass too.
It absolutely means assault rifle 15.
You heard it here first, folks.
You heard it here. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think we're just gonna close out with talking about Dan Crenshaw. He went to this youth summit in Houston, which is where I'm at, where we're at, and he's doing this like he's starting to go on his speaking tours now. He's gonna be Dan Crenshaw, big military man in the government. Is he draining the swamp? He could be one of these days, as long as he passes a bill that is not so vapid and pointless that it gets approved for 19-0.
Yeah,
he's just gonna look. He's gonna get voted out. If not this time around, then probably the next time around. He's gonna get voted out of the House, and he's gonna become a Fox News commentator and probably get his own fucking show or something. Because that's how these things work. Like that is what all of this is. There is no reason for this power because he has no actual power. He's a representative in Texas. Like that's, it's as useless. Being a right winger in Texas is as useless as being a right winger in Missouri. It doesn't matter because you're around your own fucking people. So whatever. It's just another drop in the ocean there. All of this is it's always a grift. It's always a grift. Every Republican is doing a grift. Please go to patreon.com/hellofaWayToDie and sign up for $5. Every conservative.
Smoothest transition into plugs I've ever seen.
But hey, you know what? Nate and I can make way more money if we became insane.
Yeah.
We know that.
It's
and instead we stick to our guns.
Our very, very guns. We stick to our Bobby's nightsticks. Like it's just,
it's. I don't trust any of them, and I know like the way I'm sure that Dan Crenshaw's whole thing is he knows that he sits in. I mean, Texas is kind of going purplish. He's in a liberal city. There's a very good chance that he's not going to hold on to his seat. So he's probably just like, well, what's my next thing? And it's going to be Fox News commentator in the world of the Dems, because more than likely a Democrat will get a Democratic president, and Fox News will have to ramp it up to get all the racist grandpas to do it. And who better than a war hero who lost his eye in Afghanistan fighting for our freedom?
Yeah, he's already like beefing with Gun Girl, Caitlin Bennett, and kind of all of.
Whoa,
that,
really? He's beefing with her?
With the InfoWars people. Yeah, he like messaged her on Twitter and was like, "What good do you think will come of purposely distorting my views and making an enemy out of me?"
She's a flat earther, so I respect her a lot more now. Because she's gone. I only respect conservatives who go completely batshit insane. Duncan Hunter and Gun Girl. Those are my two picks. My two Republican picks because they're nuts. I love them.
Well, she called him a soy boy, so like
I just love the idea of her reaching out to him and be like, "Let's just make amends. As long as you teach me the Navy SEAL secret for not shitting yourself, I know you guys have one."
Oh goodness! Well, I can't wait to hear where he finally ends up. Starts writing for Quillette instead of being published in whatever New York Times opinion section.
Yeah, I do think though that we should all probably jump off of the fact that of his disability and missing an eye, and we should all jump onto the fact that his mom died of cancer when he was 10. I mean, like there's a lot of unmined territory going with Soldier Man with dead mom. So
yes, exactly. Well, I mean, I guess more than anything else, I just Dan Crenshaw wouldn't exist if he's just like the fifth sort of step of a process that begins with 9/11 and then goes through like the Wounded Warrior shit. Like people are fixated on this idea of veterans as sort of like the solution to America's problems, that somehow we can see through the ether in ways that other people can't, and that we somehow are gonna make America better. And it's like, I don't know, man. There's like almost a
You aren't? Wait, why would we have you on here if you aren't?
We're just
you're the Pathfinders guys.
We're just assholes like anybody else. We just happen to have a job that was basically like the post office with machine guns, and now here we are, and so it's like.
Are you saying you were in the Kevin Costner film, The Postman?
That is the most Fallout 4 aesthetic I've ever heard.
I still need to see The Postman. I never have. I've seen Waterworld.
Don't.
I saw Waterworld in theaters as a kid, man. So.
Oh no!
And so all I remember about it, besides that there's a lot of water, because I was 11 when I saw it. The two most 11-year-old things you could possibly remember from that movie. Number one, there's an old car with a bumper sticker that says "Nuke the whales." Number 2, he fucks a woman on a raft. That's literally all I remember from it.
Yeah, that's the movie.
Surprisingly, those are the only 2 things not involved in their live show over at Universal Park.
Unfortunate. Well, thanks guys for taking time out of your evenings to record with us and bitch about Dan
Thanks
Crenshaw.
for having us.
Hey, I will take any excuse to yell about Dan Crenshaw or any veteran that is leveraging their shit to be. I will say, if you're going to be a veteran who is in the military or is a elected official, be Lee Carter or be Tammy Duckworth, where like you bring it up when it's when it actually means something and is actually pertinent to the conversation, instead of just being like
when someone's like, "Hey, why didn't you stand for the
Yeah,
pledge?"
right.
Huh?
Yeah, instead of like Dan Crenshaw, who like somebody's like, "Man, when are you gonna have the courage?" He's like, "Don't you talk to me about courage? I was in Afghanistan. How dare?" Like it was a trigger. Like the word courage is a trigger word for Dan Crenshaw to immediately be like, "How dare you? I was a Navy SEAL, sir." And it's just like, dude, I was talking about courage, the cowardly dog, man. What are you talking? Why are you yelling at me? It's just a good cartoon from the '90s. Why are you screaming at me right now?
Oh, fuck's sake. Yeah, well, thank you for having us on. We appreciate getting to share the platform and generally talk about right-wing chuds and stuff in the military. So hopefully your fans enjoy.
Fuck yeah. Well, can you tell us where we can find you at? What you guys are doing? Anything you guys have coming up?
Well, I mean, we always have our podcast, which is What a Hell of a Way to Die. You can follow me at Army Strang. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. Follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. We have a Patreon. We have bonus episodes. We do a bonus episode every week. And we have a $10 zine. We do a physical zine that we send out if you're at the $10 a month level. And you get all kinds of other goodies like stickers and patches and stuff like that. We recently just sent one out. And we are currently taking submissions for the new one. So if you want to get down on that, even if you don't want to get the zine itself physically, if you're a Patreon, you get a digital copy of it, and you're more than welcome to submit stuff into it. So you can DM us. You can email at sergeantjoker@hellofawaytodie.com. Just however you want to get into contact with us. And then, like I said, we are patreon.com/hellofawaytodie. And we have YouTube. We sell T-shirts online. If you go to hellofawaytodie.com, you'll find everything. That's our main website that has links to all of our stuff. So
we saw the stupid.
We're doing a lot of stuff.
We saw like Black Rifle Coffee Company and the fucking Grunt Style, and we're like, we want to make stupid veteran merchandise, but we don't want it to be racist. So that's kind of the vibe we're going off of. Like, are we profiteering from it? Sure, but I mean, in the grand scheme of things, like, we're not going to make some horrible video, like weird motion picture style ad about the cop who like wants to fuck the rubble on 9/11. So he's going to beat up Antifa. So we can't be as bad as Grunt Style. All right. We're never going to be that bad.
Yeah. If ever there was going to be a video, like a commercial for our t-shirt company, it would absolutely involve the ending song from Life of Brian. Always look on the bright side of life. Yeah. About how life is just shit and you're just gonna die, so get over it. And that's our brand.
Fucking beautiful. I love listening to these guys, and it's really cool that they at least have a background in the military, because that's something that comes up a surprising amount when discussing issues like healthcare for veterans, or when someone comes in and uses their valor as a talking point, as justification for something. So they're also a great resource I pointed people to that are veterans and maybe aren't 100% sure how they relate to online leftists. So definitely go support them. We don't have a Patreon, so give all of the Patreon money you'd give to us to them. And we have a Twitch stream. Let's see. I'll be putting this out on the day of the Twitch stream. Yeah. So listen to our Twitch stream. Follow the podcast on Twitter at Dolphin Garage. Follow me at Shinobi1 Kenobi. Follow Kelton at Sex Confetti. And we will see y'all later.